This week, the Clarets are on an international break, so we sat down with a very special guest. This is the No Nay Never podcast. Hello and welcome to this very special edition of the No Nay Never podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Bromley, and joining me this week is a man who needs no introduction, but we're going to give him one anyway. Welcome to the show, author, journalist, broadcaster, strategist, mental health campaigner, campaign director, former Downing Street press secretary and Labour Director of Communications, podcaster and Burnley fan, Mr. Alastair Campbell. Alastair, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Natalie. Glad you saved the last till the end there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the main one. That's the one that we all want. Let's not waste any time. Let us dive straight in there and let's take you right back to the very beginning and tell us how on earth a young lad born and raised in Keighley, West Yorkshire, ended up as a Burnley fan.
Well, there were a lot of Burnley fans in Keighley back then. I mean, I was born in 1957. I think my first game I was 4. So we were reigning league champions. And if you think about it, you know, what was nearby, Bradford, Leeds, Halifax, Huddersfield. I mean, there were a lot of football clubs around. My dad was a vet in Keighley. He wasn't, he didn't support Burnley the way I do, but he was, his team insofar, he was from the Hebrides, but he was really a Partick Thistle supporter because he was at Glasgow University when he was a vet student. And but we just all, we liked football from a very early age, and so we, 1 week we'd go to Bradford, we'd go to Blackburn, we'd go to Burnley. We just went to football, but I sort of fell in love with Burnley from the word go. And then there's a guy called Peter Laughlin who he's basically called Burnley Pete, but he's the son. His dad was a doctor in Keighley. Paddy Laughlin, he was a very good friend of my dad's. And when my dad couldn't take me to the games, Pete used to take me. And I've been seeing Peter. I mean, he never, ever, ever misses a game, home and away. I mean, obviously, we're all missing games at the moment. But I've seen Pete all my life. I've seen him at away games. And we always have the same conversation. And it's become a joke because both my parents are dead, but we still say, how's your mum, how's your dad? How's your dad?
Oh.
So that was how really just it was just I don't know, I just fell in love with Burnley.
Oh, there's something about our club and there's something about our town that happens to. Everybody we speak to, it's, they went to Turf Moor usually with their dad or their uncle or another family member, and there's something about our club that gets you and gets under your skin and just doesn't let go. I was looking earlier on at obviously just the decades of football that you've seen at Turf Moor in your time there, and just what's happened to us. And if my maths are correct, when you started going to Burnley as a young lad, it will have been sort of around the late 60s. So you saw obviously a club going from the glory days to a steady decline, unfortunately, through the 60s, the really grim times of the 70s, right the way through the Orient game in the 80s. And then obviously you then saw us on the way out through the Chris Waddle years, the Stan Ternent years, the Steve Cottrell years, all the way through ITV Digital, and then suddenly to this amazing new world that we're living in at the moment. If we concentrate on what I like to call it as life before Daesh, what from that era, from your younger days, is there a particular time as being a Burnley fan that, all the nostalgia comes out and really, really gets you in terms of memories?
It's probably, I mean, the thing with me was that when I was first started to go, I was like, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then when I was 11, we moved away to Leicester. And actually, it was probably then that I realised that it was the Burnley thing was really big in me. So when I was a teenager, sort of in my mid-teens, I started to, hitchhike to games.
Oh, wow.
And so that was kind of, that would be, what was I born 57, 67, 70. It was around the kind of, I guess it was Paul Fletcher, Leighton James, Martin Dobson. It was that kind of era. And that's when I feel that I really that was my sort of era.
Mm.
If I look at my strips, right, I've got quite a few Burnley strips. My favourite strip ever, and fun enough, I associate it with Mike Summerby. It's the V. You know the V on the you got the claret, and then you just
On the neck.
on the V on the neck, yeah, around the
Yeah, I love
chest.
that.
And I think that sort of was an era that I really, yeah, I really feel that I sort of cemented my love. I've got to tell you, by the way, when I was at school in Leicester, I never, ever, 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 ever took my scarf off, ever.
Amazing. What a hero. Was there never going to school in Leicester though? Obviously, Leicester are a town team as well, and the people in Leicester will have the same connection to their club. Was there never a temptation, being so far away from Burnley, to go and watch the local club or change allegiance at that point?
Well, I did go and watch Leicester every now and then, and I remember a couple of times I went to watch Forest as well. But and I like watching football, right? So don't get me wrong, I
Yeah,
didn't go along and think, oh, this is really boring, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't the same. And so what I found then was that living in Leicester, the one good thing about it in terms of following football is it meant that actually there was quite a lot of good away games I could get to, whether that was London, whether that was in the Midlands. So I actually ended up going to quite a lot of away games.
yeah.
And also I was really lucky at school. I had a teacher called Mr. Mason who was a German teacher. And he was a big Burnley fan. So he used to want to go to games as well. So sometimes he'd drive me to games. So yeah, that was the period when I really felt that what I'd always felt as a young kid growing up in Keighley, I'm a Burnley supporter. It became something much bigger.
Yeah, the love affair starts, and like I said before, it gets you, doesn't it? I think one of the notes that I made when I was looking at this, when I was just thinking about just the career that you've had and the opportunities that you've been afforded through your life, the challenges it must have been and probably continues to be to actually get to see live games, and it's something that's on all of our minds at the moment because we are restricted in watching live football.
Mm.
I guess the hitchhiking story is hilarious, but I don't know if there is any, but was there any particularly hilarious days where you had to overcome and battle the elements to get to a Burnley game?
There's two that come to mind for that. One is we played away at Carlisle, and I had I was living in Leicester. I went to Keighley, or was it Burnley? I think I went to Keighley to meet up with Pete Laughlin, and we got a bus either from Keighley or from Burnley, and we went to Carlisle. I had two shoes. One was called Cochrane and one was called Smith. I named my shoes after Burnley players. I had a coat called Nobby, which was named after Peter Noble. Um, anyway, when we scored, when we scored, we had I don't know why, but we had a huge turnout that night, and I think they gave us the side of the ground. I mean, this could be sort of vague memory, but I remember not being behind the goal. We were in the side, and we scored a goal, and in the celebration, right, I lost one of my shoes.
Oh no!
I lost Cochrane.
I was going to say, which one was it?
It
I
was
feel I
Cochrane,
feel
right?
attached.
Terry Cochrane was my right foot because he was the right winger, and in the madness and the melee, my shoe went off. So, and I was looking around for my shoe for the rest of the game, and I thought, well, I'll have to wait till the end, right? So I had to wait for everybody to leave the ground, and my shoe wasn't there. So
Oh no!
somebody had made off with my bloody shoe. Meanwhile, I'd taken so long to get out of the ground, the coach had gone.
Oh no!
They'd gone without me. I
So
had
you've got one shoe on and
I've
you've
got
got no
one
ride home.
shoe, and I'm hitchhiking back from Carlisle.
Oh God, Carlisle as well.
Yeah, it's a long way. So that's one but the other one that came to mind when you were talking is actually when I was working in Downing Street and we're doing the Northern Ireland peace process. The Scunthorpe game, right? Mickey Mellon and Glenn Little goals. There was no way in the world that I was going to miss that.
Oh no, no, definitely not.
So I remember at one point we were at Hillsborough Castle, and it was really quite intense negotiations. And Bertie Ahern, the Irish Prime Minister, who's quite a big football fan, big Man United fan, and I knew that he had a ticket for the Newcastle Man United game. And I said, Bertie, listen, I've got to get out of here. We can't let this thing go on to the Saturday. It's just impossible. We've got to, you've got to set a definitive deadline. Anyway, but what happened, actually, as it happened, the talks did go on, and I did leave early. It's the only time I felt the dereliction of duty to the government. I left early,
Oh wow.
but I had to
That
get there.
That was such that game. We were all at Turf Moor. I was with my dad, and they'd opened the what's now the James Hargreaves stand, and they'd
Yeah,
put this massive, great big screen on the pitch. And because it was Burnley back then, and we weren't as slick as we are now. It was just terrible, and it kept cutting out. So everybody all had their headphones on in the stands, and yeah, that was a great day. And to think about where you were, where we were, I think that's a very stark difference for that one.
yeah, no, it was,
Um,
it was, and also it was sad in a way because there were so many people wanted to be there, and actually Scunthorpe's
yeah.
quite a small ground, but that was a fantastic day. It really was.
Yeah, it really was. There's some real moments, and people talk about your love of your club and what it is about football that gets you. And when we do talks like this, and you speak to people, and I love asking people what their favourite memories are about certain
Mm,
games, because it just triggers some key moments, and you're instantly catapulted back to that moment and how you felt. And I
mm,
got goosebumps already just thinking about that Scunthorpe game. It's incredible. Which brings us on to the big one in recent times, and how we move away from the old times of Burnley in the earlier days to where we are now, and that is, of course, the playoff final at Wembley. I always ask everybody this because it's such in our modern game, it's such a key defining moment. But where were you on that day, and did you ever see that moment ever happening for us?
Um, well, I was there at the game.
Mhm.
Um, it was my birthday actually, May the 25th.
Oh wow!
Yeah. Um, Funnily enough, it was one of those games that even Fiona, my partner, who isn't really into football at all, but she wanted to go as well, um, and the whole family were there. Um, yeah, that was a great day. Did I ever see it coming? Yeah, I think I probably did. Um, I think I always felt that Burnley were, once we'd got through the Orient game, and once we'd started that kind of climb back, and once we got into that kind of, into the championship, I always thought there was a chance. I always thought
Yeah,
there was a chance. I think what's happened since then has been amazing. I've got to say, by the way, you talk about memories. I actually enjoyed the semi final at Reading as much as any game that season. The second leg
yes.
at Reading, that was another one, by the way. I had to get back from Belgium for that one.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah,
God.
yeah.
Was that another hitchhiking with one shoe,
No,
or was
I
that a
didn't.
bit
I
more
got I got the
sophisticated?
Eurostar.
Oh yeah, yeah. You've gone up in the world by then, for sure. That was definitely not hitchhiking with poor shoe. I feel really invested emotionally in that poor lost shoe. I
Yeah, do
feel
you know
like
what though? It was a really bad shoe as well. It was like, I don't know. Do you remember those shoes that Noddy Holder used to wear? That like sort of, it was it was not a good shoe. It really wasn't.
it is, but there's an emotional attachment. I still feel
Oh,
sorry
there
for him.
was, yeah, coffee and stick, yeah.
It is. Obviously, you've touched on there about what's happened since then, and I think you're right. I think it only takes one shot at the Premier League. You just need that one chance for a season. And recently, we've seen a lot of clubs who've taken that opportunity and had their shot at the Premier League. But I think one thing that maybe did take us all surprise is particularly in the last 10 years, what an established club we've been, and essentially the fortunes we're experiencing at the moment. And many people, of course, credit that to the man at the helm at the moment. And you don't see in the game much anymore this manager who is so integrated in a club, who deals with management from top to bottom and off the pitch, and behind the scenes, and the players themselves. Do you credit Dyche completely with everything that's happened? I guess what I'm getting at is just how important is he in your eyes to the current successes that we are experiencing?
I mean, he's fundamental. I mean, I've got to know him really well, and I like him. I think he's a great guy, and I think he's somebody who suffers in a way because of his image. And when I say
Mm,
by image, I mean literally the kind of how he looks and how he sounds and how he speaks. And I mean, one of my favourite chants in recent years is that thing we did, anti-football.
oh, I
When
love that.
when we're playing, at times really good football, and I think that no, Sean deserves enormous credit, and I think he's somebody who's put his heart and soul into it, and I think his team around him. I think Ian Woan Tony Loughran and Billy Mercer. I mean, I've been at the training ground with them at times when you can sense that is a real team within a team. That's the team
Yeah,
driving the team. And I really, really hope Sean stays for as long as he possibly can, because I think he's been fundamental to the success. And I slightly worry with that thing. You said, now that we're an established club, and I remember a recent game that we were on Sky, and Jamie Carragher was doing the punditry, and he said this thing. He said, there's no way Burnley going to go down. There's no. He said, Burnley going to be
oh
all right. And I'm thinking, you just don't know what it's like.
no,
It's like you can't say that because, and I think that we've become established as a Premier League club, in part because year after year after year, we've defied gravity.
yeah, we have.
And I
Yeah,
think a lot of that is down to him just getting so much out of the players, and even in recent weeks when it's been really tough, and you've had all it's just not been easy, and yet you can see the players giving it all.
yeah,
Even I mean, like the game against Brighton recently, I thought there was a lot of moaning on social media, but I just thought that was a team that's got its back against the wall and they were digging in, and it was impressive.
yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the things that I think it is bothering people at the moment is that we keep feeling like we are punching above our weight, and people keep reminding us that we are punching above our weight, and that's really really tough, because you're constantly feeling like you're having to prove yourself. And when I say established, this is our fifth season in the league now, and we've finished in Europe. One of those, we finished 10th last year, and
Mm.
people seem to be surprised that suddenly we're in a relegation zone. And actually, for us, every single season is probably going to be, at least at the start, a fight to avoid relegation, and then let's see how much further we can get on. I kind of want to pick up on the point you were saying about hoping that Dyche stays as long as it does, because clearly, obviously, we all do. And there's been quite a lot of press reported this season, and a lot of talk about this fallout that he supposedly had with Mike Garlick, and the potential irreparable relationship that they've now got. And that, of course, has then been brought in with the potential takeover as well. Um, do you think that's been unsettling? Do you think that's played a part on the pitch? Because we know Dyche wants to be very calm and he wants to keep these players level-headed, but surely that can't have helped his preparations.
Well, I think that one of the things that I think he's a very good communicator, Sean. I think what he does on the media is good, and he's always there. He's always very much as a kind of spokesman for the club, and he doesn't play games that a lot of managers play. And so, look, I think footballers are there. I've got to know some of them reasonably well, and I think that I think they're affected by it in the same way as anybody else is. But I think professional footballers are that. They're professional footballers, and
Yeah,
so whether I was thinking, for example, about you. I saw that interview recently with James Tarkowski,
yeah, I
and
was going to ask about that.
talking about going away and what have you. But I didn't feel that when he was playing against, he was still top of the block stats, and he was,
Yeah,
So I don't know is the honest answer, but I think that when you get what you have, I think at Burnley, obviously there's a lot going on off the field, and hopefully that will be sort of sorted reasonably soon. But I think that I've always liked the fact that Burnley's felt like a kind of locally owned club. That you've had people that have been Burnley fans who've been on the board and running the club, and maybe that's naive to think that in the Premier League of the modern age that can be kept. But what I say is, in an ideal world for me, that would carry on. But if that has to change, if there is going to be a sale, then I do think that whoever's involved in that, they're going to want Sean Dyche to stay on. There's absolutely no
yeah.
doubt to me about that, and I think that's an important part of what will happen.
Yeah. Picking up on a couple of points you just made then about reputation and image rights, I find this really fascinating. And there's a couple of things here, one concerning Sean Dyche and one concerning players, particularly James Tarkowski. Um, we know we're not fashionable, and we know we seem to be the whipping boys, and particularly on social media and in the press. And Sky is sometimes very guilty of looking down at us and being a little bit disrespectful to what we want to do here. Um, I think Sean Dyche seems to have fallen out of the favourites list whenever top six jobs or quite high profile jobs come up. I think a few years ago, particularly when the likes of Everton and Leicester jobs were coming up, we were terrified we were going to lose him. And he seems to have fallen out of favour in terms of odds for getting poached for those jobs. And I read a really interesting article about this. Forgive me, I can't remember where I picked it up from, so I can't reference it. But it was along the lines that that Dyche is a victim of outstaying his welcome at Burnley, and that he's now become so synonymous with the club, and his style is so associated with what's considered boring anti-football that is now no longer an attractive commodity. And I just thought that was really unfair.
Yeah, but listen, I mean, you know, I think it's probably good that you can't remember where you read it. I mean, I,
Yeah, true.
I mean, my reaction to that sort of stuff is kind of who cares? It's like,
Yeah.
I mean, if I do think it's interesting that if you think about, you know, when you were going through all the managers, you didn't mention Eddie Howe. Eddie Howe,
Oh God, yeah, I'd
Eddie
forgotten.
Howe was the manager before Sean. Uh,
Yes.
For a while, whenever there was never mind Everton, Leicester, Newcastle, whenever there was a kind of top four, top six job going, Eddie Howe was, you know, and his name would be in there in the mix.
Yeah.
Now, it never happened, but you'd have to say, if you looked at who had been the more successful manager at Burnley, you'd have to say Sean Dyche, not Eddie Howe.
Yeah.
You know, you look at what's happened. Eddie's gone. Sean's still there. Now, I think that what I mean by the image thing, I think that, you know, I don't think we get that bad a deal, by the way. I think most clubs who are not Liverpool, not Man United, not Man City, not Chelsea, most clubs think they don't get a fair deal from the broadcasters. We're no different to, you know, to West Ham, Brighton. I mean, they all say the whole thing about last on match of the day and all that stuff. So we're in that group. But I actually think that I think we do get taken seriously by the sports media. I think Sean is taken seriously, but I think you're right. I think that I remember when when it was at Everton, there was a lot of sort of negative stuff about Sean on social media, but there was also a lot of positive stuff. I think the
Mm.
point is that yes, Burnley has got a reputation. Yes, you and I would agree that that reputation is unfair. But I actually do think that what he has done for the club and the club generally, I think we are actually respected and quite popular. I mean, you know, it always makes me laugh when that when we sing that song, "No one likes us, we don't care." I think people do like us.
Yeah.
You
No,
know,
I think you're probably right. Actually, I think maybe I'm guilty sometimes of being oversensitive because I just like my emotions and I want people to like us. And so when I hear I'm terrible at doing that thing where I'll always remember the negative side and I'll forget the positive. So
no,
perhaps
I
I've
think
been
it's like, you know, I think the thing about I remember particularly that year when we're in Europe. And look, when I get in, say if I'm out and about in London and I get on to get on the tube or I get in a taxi or whatever, and complete strangers talk to me. And that used to be 80% of people would want to talk to me about politics. I reckon I get as many people now want to talk to me about Burnley, and certainly taxi drivers. Virtually the first thing they always say is, "Like your manager."
oh, brilliant.
They do,
Yeah.
and I think that, you know, and when we were in Europe, you know, um, there was a lot of people. You know, I was getting a lot of messages from a lot of people saying, "God, I really hope you do well in Europe." And you know, I just think it was. I don't think we should underestimate how. I think we've seen pretty positively. And by the way, don't judge life according to who says what on social media. Honestly, it bears no relation to the real world.
Yeah, no, well, that's something that I definitely want to come on to next, particularly when we're talking about the world in social media compared to how it was 10 years ago. So we'll come on to that in a moment. Very quick question then on this same topic. Um, do you think, and I'm probably going to say you probably think not actually, but I'll be interested to see why you think this is. In a similar thread, Burnley players apart from Nick Pope, so I'm particularly looking at Ben Mee and James Tarkowski, consistently being overlooked for the England squad. I'd perhaps unfairly or incorrectly put that down to image again. I wonder whether you, given what you've just said about Daesh, you maybe disagree with that. But can you shed any light on why you think they're being overlooked?
Um, I mean, it's funny. Gareth Southgate, who comes to a lot of our games, and we have a running joke because I text him after virtually every game, and when I see him at the grounds, I will say to him, why have you never picked Matt Loughton? He's far better than Trent Alexander-Arnold. And also I remember when Ashley Barnes was that talk about him going to Austria, I said,
Oh
"Come on,
God,
Southgate, get in fast,
get
get
him
in fast."
signed up.
Um, Look, I don't know. I think it's hard. I think for the England manager, he's building a team, isn't he? He's building a squad,
Mm,
but he's going to be building it around certain key players. So he's just made a judgment that the people that he's picking are the people that he wants for that team. I think the fact that he comes to Burnley as often as he does, he's obviously, I think he likes the fact we've got so many English players, but also he gave Jack Cork a go, didn't he? Tarkovsky's given a go. Ben Mee, you
yeah,
know, yeah, maybe age, I don't know. Um, I don't know is the honest answer, but I certainly don't think for one second that Gareth Southgate holds against them the fact that they're from Burnley. No,
certainly.
I think
Excellent. That makes me feel a lot better.
I really don't think so.
Good. I feel reassured. Well, let's dive
Oh,
straight
by the way,
into.
let me tell
Oh,
you, I sat one game. I can't remember what game it was, but not that long. Some last season, there was one game where I ended up sitting next to AD Boothroyd, and Gareth was there as well. And AD Boothroyd was waxing lyrical, as they say, about Dwight McNeil at the time.
oh, excellent. Well, of course, he is pushing his way through the England ranks. So I do fully expect that he will make it into the seniors because he's trained with them as well. He has I think he's trying to fast track him a little bit. So,
Mm,
so yeah, I think poor one of the biggest disappointments for me in our transfer policies in failing to bring in a few more players is that poor Dwight is just screaming at desperately needing a break.
mm,
The poor lad's trying his best, and Burnley fans, you know what Burnley fans are like. We'll always do this, but he's getting a bit of grief at the moment from fans saying, "Oh, I can't remember when he last had a good game." You just think, Christ, he's a young
mm.
lad, give him a break. So yeah, I do hope that soon, hopefully in January, we get a bit of cash and we get some cover for the poor lad and give him a break. Otherwise, he's going to be on his legs. Um, let's pick straight up then and start going back into what we briefly touched on then, and we're talking about social media and image and all sorts of things, because of course one of the things you're very passionate about and you speak so eloquently about is mental health and campaigning for awareness of people and just protection for people's mental health status. Um, at the moment, life is tough. We're in the middle of a global pandemic. We're all stuck indoors and we are being restricted from being able to see loved ones. And in terms of our world, of where we are at the moment, live sport is off the table. And for a lot of people, Saturday afternoons or however it may be, seeing their teams play live, the football routines pre and post is having an enormous effect on people. Um, I guess well, what are your thoughts on fans getting back to the stadiums as quickly as we can? Are you all for it now? Are you understanding of the cautions and the resistance to get fans back in stadiums? Where do you sit in this subject?
Hmm. I mean, look. Let's come on to the pandemic and the management of it in a minute. But have do I think that football is suffering as a result of fans not being in the stadium? Absolutely, 100%.
Mm,
Um, it's really interesting, actually. I've realised that it's not football I'm missing; it's Burnley and its
yeah,
crowds.
yeah, it's the
Um, I
routine
mean,
as well.
apart from the Burnley games, I'm not watching that much on television.
Yeah,
And do you know what? I thought Manchester United made a massive boo boo right at the start of the pandemic because they put a huge banner behind the away end corner, and
yeah,
they had a huge banner across that. I can't remember what that stands called, but a huge banner across it. And it was a quote. It's actually a quote from Jock Stein, but they said it was Matt Busby. And it was the famous quote. Football without fans isn't football. And I thought, blimey, what on earth have you got that up for there? Because as soon as I saw that, I thought you're absolutely right, and I turned over.
yeah,
I'm,
yeah. It's like,
I'm not enjoying football as much as I was.
oh God,
And
that's so true. We're not.
no, and and until the fans come back, so like sometimes on a Sunday afternoon, I might be sitting on the sofa and I'm channel hopping, and I'll go through, and there might be a Scottish game and a Dutch game,
Mm,
a German game and a French game, and the thing that draws you into it is the atmosphere. So if
yeah,
it's like Borussia Dortmund against Bayern Munich, there's good atmosphere. You're going to watch it. Yes, there's going to be good football. If it's Celtic Rangers, you want to watch it. If it's an empty stadium and the football's not that great, you're not going to watch it.
No,
So I
true.
think football's got a really a tough job. And you know, the other thing is that I mean, I do think our government has completely mishandled the whole thing, but I won't get too political on the whole. But when I saw the other day New Zealand playing Australia at rugby, and they had a crowd back in,
Yeah,
because they've handled it better. So yeah,
yeah,
we have got to get back to crowds as soon as we can. I've got to say, by the way, the one sport that I think is, don't ask me why, but rugby league seems the intensity of the sport is just the same. Whereas I feel, I actually went to the when we played West Ham, um, and in the one of the first fanless games, as it were, and I did the commentary for with Phil Bird for Claret's player, and it was really interesting because we were winning 1-0, about 5 minutes to go, and West Ham got a corner, and it was David Moyes was going absolutely berserk on the touchline because his players they were just sort of ambling up for this corner.
yeah.
Whereas if there was a crowd there, you'd have felt that intensity.
Yeah, absolutely. You feel the pressure, you feel them getting behind you and willing you to want to just like really go for it. And how many times have we seen that at turf as well? Even when we are, there's just one goal in it, and we see our players just throwing everything they can right to the corner, and even goalkeepers coming up at the end and things like that. And I'm the same as you. I feel very disengaged with it at the moment. I
Mm,
feel like, and it is, and especially, I'm still lucky enough that I go to the football with my dad, and we've had a season ticket together since I was a child, and I think I've seen him twice since March because he doesn't live in the same town as me, and
mm.
just that whole routine is having a real impact on us. It really is, and I do think it just to me. We talk about the handling of certain situations. The justifications for not having fans back in the grounds yet doesn't make sense to me. So until somebody gives me a logical explanation that I can understand, then I don't accept that,
Well,
that
I,
this
I mean,
can fall
I
through.
can sort of get it in that it's the. I mean, you've seen, for example, I was watching a game. I think it was in Norway where they had you could go as long as you were with people from your same household and you sat 3 seats apart from the next person, and every second
Mm,
row was empty, and it meant that they had about, I don't know, in a stadium of about 20,000, they had about 4,000 people in. But actually, it did at least create a bit of atmosphere.
yeah,
And I guess what people are worried about is it's the travelling, it's the socialising, it's the meeting up beforehand, it's all that stuff. So I see
yeah.
why they're, but I think it's partly because in Britain we ballsed it up so much at the start that I think we're still paying a very heavy price for
Yeah, we're always playing catch up to try and
it.
sort to unwind decisions that were made months ago. Yeah, no, I completely understand. It was interesting to hear you talk about social media because, and maybe moving away a little bit from football as well into one of the million other areas of your life that we could have chosen to talk about on this podcast. It was very hard to narrow it down. Um, Social media is just very quickly become part and parcel of life. And you said to me earlier on in the show, just don't believe everything that you hear on social media. And it's quite interesting, really, because quite depressingly as well, but as a female football fan and somebody who puts fan-led content out there, I'm often targeted with the trolling and the abuse, and sometimes it feels a little bit as well that I want to sometimes put tweets out and say, guys, it's not my fault we lost. Can we stop blaming me? Why am I getting things thrown at me? And it was interesting to hear you obviously talk quite candidly about social media being non-reliable a source and just don't listen to it. And I wondered how your political career, I think this is probably the field to move into, it's probably most relevant. Clearly, in the political peak around the 1996 election and around the success and the Blair victory, social media just wasn't a thing then. And so I guess not just in football, but in life in general, how has social media changed our viewpoint and how we communicate our feelings? Because it must be a completely different landscape for you now.
Well, it is and it isn't. I mean, it's look, it's definitely changed the way that political communications, no doubt
Mm,
about that. And just look at the fact that I don't think I'm not sure Trump would ever have become president if he hadn't been able to build that massive following using
yeah.
social media, feeling no compunction about lying, dividing people, and all the stuff that he does. But I would say that Joe Biden's election in recent weeks is he. Yes, they were using social media effectively as well, but they were also using the more, if you like, the more old-fashioned parts of a campaign, which is really just about core basic strategy. And I think that the problem with the and by the way, I'm not wholly negative about social media. So social media can be incredibly, like when a lot of the campaigning work that I do, and you mentioned mental health agenda, a lot of that I do through social media.
Mm,
If I'm promoting a book, I use it. Social media is an incredibly effective tool to do that. And also, I think that what I worry about in football, and this is why I mean, look, Sean Dyche is not on social media, and I'm sure he wishes that the players weren't on social media, and I'm sure he wishes it didn't exist, but it does exist, and I think you've got to, in a sense, if you've got to educate people in any walk of life, in any public position. You mentioned Dwight McNeil. Why, Dwight McNeil's a young guy. He's very good at football, and yet we build them up too much in my mind to knock them down. And that's why I
yeah,
will stick up for footballers. I don't think they're. I've never bought this idea, by the way, that footballers are role models just because they're footballers. I mean, if you like, Ben Mee adopted the role of a role model when he came out and talked about that banner in the way that he did, and I admired and
sure.
respected him for it. Marcus Rashford, in what he's doing at school meals at the moment, free school meals, he's become a role model because he's decided that's what he wants to do. But just because you're a footballer doesn't make you a role model. And I think that the people should give footballers a lot more slack than they get.
Yeah,
And I can, even as I say that, I can hear people say, "Oh, these guys, they're on 20 grand a week for kicking a ball. It's what they've always wanted to do. We're entitled to say whatever we like about them." Well, no, you're not.
yeah,
You're
yeah,
entitled to have a judgment. You're entitled to have a view. You're entitled to express that view. But I think that what I can't stand is when the mob, if you like, decides that its view is more important than the manager who actually knows these players, who
yeah,
actually knows what's making them tick, who knows whether they're going to go out there and perform. So I'm just much more of the view that don't take it. It's there, you've got to deal with it, but don't take it seriously, and certainly don't let it define your own life and your own opinion of yourself.
yeah. No, that is so true, and I think I feel for the new generation of kids who are coming through now who've never known a life before social media, because from such a young age they are immediately image conscious. They are aware of what their voice carries. They are aware of how they are perceived, and job opportunities are judged often on their social media profiles as well. Opportunities arise, and whole careers now are forged on social media. So they're the great sides of it. But then it also gives a platform for hate and for opinions that potentially shouldn't really be forced down people's
Mm.
throats, And there's a very toxic side to it as well. And my
For
hope
sure.
is that yeah, my hope is that the people the kids who are growing up with it now, who've never known any different, will pave the way to forge it into a stronger medium that it is. Um, I think you mentioned, obviously, then it was one thing that I was desperately trying. I'm really glad you raised it, because I really wanted to get your opinion on this without it being too awkward a segue into it. What what on earth were your thoughts, with your political mind on now? What on earth were your thoughts during that week long period of the US election, and actually everything that's gone on since?
Well, I mean, I was really, 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 really rooting for Biden.
Mm,
I do think Trump's been a terrible influence on the world, not just in America, but right around the world. And so I was just stuck on the sofa for 5 days, just following it and writing about it and tweeting about it and what have you. And obviously, I've got a lot of friends in the Democrat Party that I was talking to. And I think what's happened since has just underlined what a terrible state the world is in, and political debate is in. That for the first time ever, a sitting president who's been democratically defeated is, rampaging around the place
Yeah,
saying the whole thing is rigged. And of course, if you've got however many million followers he's got on Twitter, including people who will believe literally anything that he says, then it's a pretty, it's a pretty dangerous place to be. I mean, it's like we play. Let's say we play Leeds United and we lose 2-1, but then Sean Dyche does the after-match interview on the premise that we won 3-2.
yeah.
It's like, you've got to have some sort of acceptance of basic factual truth, and the fact is that he's lost the election, but he won't acknowledge it.
Yeah, it's just bizarre. I mean, I certainly share your views on him. I think he's been an awful influence, and I got out of bed quite early on the Wednesday morning. I think I got up at about 5, as enough of the states were being called that we could start to see it. And I think the first thing I read when I opened up Twitter and I was kind of blinking down to the living room was the early exit polls had put quite a high percentage, something about 34% of Americans saying that the economy was the main thing that they were voting for, and that instantly made me worried and think, oh gosh, because that's his card, that's what he uses. And obviously, then I went downstairs, and I think just as I switched the television on, the Florida result had just been called, and it did look initially in the early hours that Trump had got in, and I'd just again been re-elected, and I had this horrible sinking feeling that we were going to have the world was going to have to put up with a second term, and for me, I think the biggest problem is that this whole charade about voter fraud and how the election was stolen from him, the man's ego is making him. He would rather cast doubt in a democracy in the American people's minds than allow himself to admit that he lost an election fair and square. And I just think you were never fit to hold that office. You are such an egomaniac. I'm the same as you. I was rooting for Biden, but I think if you will allow me to indulge a little bit on my own personal views on this, a lot of mine as well was Kamala Harris as well. To have a
Mm.
female vice president so high up in such a high political office for me was, it's not completely shattering the glass ceiling, but there's a great big hole in it. So yeah, it
Mm.
was. I was interested just to see what your thoughts were, and I think they probably marry up with everybody else's. We are starting to come towards the end of our time together, so there's a couple more points that I want to cover before we finish off with a quite nice little quick fire round. I was quite interested, and I don't think I'd realised this until I was researching for this interview. Just your writing career, just how many books you'd written. It's 14 now, is it? Um, I listen, reading and writing. I'm sure you've heard a million people saying this, but I'd love to think I had a book in me one day, even if it was never published. Is that something that you are particularly passionate about? Is it a process that you find really rewarding?
It is. I'm just counting them actually. I've one,
Is there
two,
14,
three,
3?
4, 5, 6, 7,
Yeah,
8, 9,
14.
10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16,
Oh, it's a 16. Oh my goodness.
17. No, it's 17 actually. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Gosh.
Well, I do write a lot. Of course, one of my favourite ones, Saturday Bloody Saturday, novel co-written with Paul Fletcher about
Mm.
football. It's not about Burnley, but it's got a lot of Burnley in it. Yeah, I do. I've written all my life. I mean, I wrote when I was a kid. I used to write all the time. I used to write songs. I used to write poems. I used to write letters to all my aunties in Scotland. I've always been a kind of compulsive writer. And there's a famous poem written by Marilyn Monroe called "Think in Ink," and I think in ink. So yeah, and
I'm
and
going to read that straight after this.
the
Think
new one,
Pink.
the new one's all about dealing with depression and mental health. And I think a lot of the yeah, I order my mind by writing. Really, I've always done that.
Mm. What do you have a favourite, or does it not work like that with books?
Um, I actually do like the latest one a lot about depression, because I feel it's like the others have been on a part of a kind of long journey to that, if you like. My first novel was really important to me, All in the Mind, and And I guess the first one, the Blair years, that was like a huge,
Yes.
huge bestseller. And
Massive, yeah, that was the one that everyone was waiting for. That was
so,
that
yeah,
was the book.
but I like them all, and as we are on No Nay Never, I did enjoy writing a book with Paul Fletcher. That was good fun.
Yeah, I bet he's a great guy. I've met Paul a few times, and he
Yeah,
is
he's a top.
equally. I could talk to him for hours. He's got some fascinating stories.
He's a good talker.
Yeah, he is. I think one of the things that I was quite sad about around the ITV digital time was that his plans for the development of Turf Moor and that really ambitious plan he had for the cricket field stand and the
Mm,
hotel and everything, it never came off.
mm,
I think that makes me quite sad that it just was a great idea at the wrong time and we never really had the ability to do it at the time. I think that
yeah,
would have been fantastic.
yeah.
Let's move it very quickly then and just re-summarise back to Burnley before we finish off. Obviously, we touched on this at the beginning. This season's not really been the start we wanted for. We hoped for, mixing my sentences together. I know that this is going to be caveated heavily, and it's a bit of a broad brush statement, but do you think we're going to survive, or do you think that this is going to be a horrible season where we inevitably face the chop?
No, listen. I think we can survive. There's no doubt about that. I think the season's not started the way that any of us would have wanted, but I still think you can see quality there, and I agree with what you said earlier. I think that hopefully once this sale happens, that there will be the kind of investment that the manager and the squad need, and that then we can pick up. But it's going to be tough. There's no point denying that it's going to be tough, and we're already looking in and around those clubs down the bottom. But the wonderful thing about the last few years is that we've had lots of matches where we've been a goal down, and in years gone by, when I was wearing those shoes, you might have thought, "Oh God, we're just not going to do this." But the natural instinct at the moment is to think, we're still in the game, we can still do this. And likewise, I think with the season, we're still in the season, and
Yeah,
we can, we go on a run. I can guarantee you, at some point in this season, we will take some points off the top clubs. And
yeah,
so, no, I don't think we should be too despondent. But I think we all recognise that the last transfer window. I mean, Dale Stevens, fine, a good player and all that, but I think we were all hopeful there'd been a bit more than that. Uh,
mm,
and once we get into the next one, let's just see where it goes. But I don't think we should be too despondent. I've
yeah.
also
I
got to say to
mean,
you, by the way, I love the championship.
oh, me too. I really do. Yeah, I think for me, it's just the profile and the fan, and because we don't have financial investment outside of TV money. It makes such a difference to our
Oh yeah,
books.
yeah,
We have to be staying in the Premier League. It's too
yeah, exactly.
important. But
No,
the Championship's a fantastic,
mm,
fantastic league. I love it immensely. The competitiveness and the fact that unlike the Premier League, anybody can do it. The Championship is anybody's race from day one, and it's
yeah.
fantastic. I love it. Very quickly, do you have a favourite player?
What current player at all time?
Yes. Well, both. Let's do both.
I think my favourite current player would be Ashley Barnes. No, Ashley Westwood and Ashley Barnes. It's the two of them. I'm actually in a little WhatsApp group with the two of them. My Ashley group.
No.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I'm so jealous.
No, I think they. I really. Yeah, but I look at every single player now, and you can make a case for all of them. Um,
Yeah, true.
but yeah, if I had to pick one, I'd probably go Barnsley.
Oh, excellent. I love it. And all time?
I'm going to say Paul Fletcher because it's not true.
Ah!
It's
Excellent.
because whenever I say Leighton James, he goes. "Ugh." So
Excellent.
yeah, but I do.
Excellent.
I think the most. I think Martin Dobson was my favourite player to. Leighton James was the player that excited me most.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of watching quality football, I loved watching Martin Dobson.
Yeah, Martin Dobson's one of my dad's actually. He always says that his was his favourite.
But
Excellent. I love that.
that era definitely was my probably kind of peak time. And
Yeah.
then I think I think Joey Barton did an amazing job for us.
Oh god, yeah, he did.
Um,
He's doing really well managerially as well, which I think we all expected he would do.
mm,
Yeah, we
no,
thought he'd
there's a,
be
there's a
successful.
there's a there's a lot of players I can say, but if I'm only allowed one, I've probably got to go. I'm going to go. Leighton James, Paul Fletcher. Leighton James, Paul Fletcher.
Okay, we'll let you off with that one. You can have that one. Right, let's finish off this session with a very light-hearted quick-fire round, just designed to finish us on a relaxed note. It's an or question. You've got to pick which one you want.
Okay.
And yeah, let's see where you stand. So, number one, meat and potato pie or hot dog?
I'm not big on either, to be honest.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if I had to have one, it would be meat and potato pie. Yeah, meat and potato pie. Yeah.
Excellent. This next one, I think you've probably already answered, but Ashley Barnes or Ashley Westwood?
Oh, I haven't really answered that, have I? I love them both.
You can't. You've got to pick one.
Barnes.
Okay, well done. Sean Dyche or Stan Ternant?
Oh, that's impossible. They're both big. They're both good mates. They're
You've got
both
to pick
good
one.
mates.
You've got to pick one.
I'm not picking one. I love Stan to bits. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, look at that one. Finally, then, and this is I don't know if you'll do this because you've not really been watching them, but in terms of the televised football, do you pick the crowd noise or do you pick the dugout?
Oh, I hate the crowd noise.
Oh, really? Oh, that surprises me. So
Oh
you
no,
listen to them swearing?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. No, do you know why I don't like the crowd noise? I don't think we should allow ourselves to get accustomed to watching football without crowds.
Oh, that's
Um,
interesting.
so if you have the fake crowd, I've actually been amazed about how many people say, "Oh, do you know what? I quite like the crowd noise," and I'm saying, "Oh no, you shouldn't listen to it," because I want to listen to the. And when I went to that game at West Ham that I commentated on with Phil Bird, I didn't enjoy it as much as I would normally enjoy a Burnley win away. I really didn't.
Oh, really? Just because you were stuck with what you were doing?
Yeah, but just like I couldn't. You can't let yourself go. You can't get into it. You can't get. It's not the same. And so look, I know we have to kind of endure it. And I think a lot of the players feel this as well. I think some players actually maybe enjoy not having that sense of the pressure. I do think that the referees have I think the referee probably has improved without a crowd. But I just feel no. When I'm watching a game on telly, I have it without the crowd noise because I don't want to get used to watching football without crowds.
That is a really important point, and I am definitely going to keep that one. Final question then: who has been to date your favourite GQ interview?
Oh, that's a good question. Oh my God, who's my favourite best one? The one that probably was the biggest coup, as it were, was Prince William talking
Yeah.
about mental health. That was a big one. Um, Actually, the one I think that's got is right up there in terms of the viewing figures is me interviewing Tony Blair was quite a thing, and I really enjoyed doing the Archbishop of Canterbury.
Oh God, yeah, but that was
Yeah.
good. Oh gosh, I just blasphemed. I can't believe I did that. I went into deep. Straight to
Well,
how
you
was
might
that?
say, "Oh God," you
How was
might
that
say,
my
"Oh
response? Excellent. Well, let's wrap up there because unfortunately, and this is all I've got time for, and I could talk to you all evening. So, I just want to finish off just by letting our listeners know as a massive thank you for your time this evening. The None and Never team are going to be making a donation to charity in your name to say thank you for you giving up your time to talk to us tonight. Do you want to tell your listeners which charity you've chosen?
It's called the Maytree Respite Centre, and it's the country's only sanctuary for the suicidal. And it's a little house in North London, and I've seen the amazing work they do in pulling people back from the brink. So yeah, the Maytree, that's my cause.
Excellent. What a fantastic cause. And listeners, we will get you details as well, and we'll put those on our social media feeds. So if anybody has the means and would like to donate as well, as they've listened to this podcast, then please do support that charity. Alistair, thank you so much. This has
My
been
pleasure,
an
enjoyed
absolute
it.
pleasure, and best of luck with all of your future endeavours, of which there will be many of them. And fingers crossed, towards the end of this season, we'll be celebrating another
Yeah.
Premier League season. Listeners, that's all we've got time for this week. As ever, our thanks go to producer Matt for editing this podcast and putting it out there, to Band Joyce, who provide our music, and finally to you, the listener, for downloading and listening to this podcast. Your support is very much appreciated, and we would not be here without you. Dave and I will be back on Friday with the preview show, looking ahead to the weekend's game, which is Monday, I think now. And the rest of the team will be back on Tuesday to analyse what happened this weekend and get back into all things claret. This has been the None and Never podcast. I've been Natalie Bromley. Until next time.